the perspective that I would share from today is, dream big, surround yourself with amazing people, stay true to the values that you got through your prep experience, continue to connect with each other and continue to help each other learn and grow on their journey, and set your sights high and enjoy the journey while you take every step.
Hey everyone, my name is Jimmy Smith and welcome to episode number 60 of the Rambler podcast, where we are passionate about sharing what makes Cathedral Prep the standard of excellence. Today we're thrilled to have Kevin Hourigan on as a guest. Kevin graduated from Cathedral Prep in 1985 and is the president and co-founder of Spinutech, an award-winning digital marketing agency with over 160 team members across the U.S. In that capacity, Kevin and his partners lead their team of digital experts to focus on growing his clients' businesses. With an entrepreneurial technology background, Kevin is an accomplished communicator, strategist, and leader. He has spoken alongside brands including Google, Facebook, Carnival Cruise Lines, and General Motors, and presented the keynote at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Small Business Summit. He has been recognized as Leader of the Year by the Tampa Chamber of Commerce, Technology Leader of the Year by the Tampa Bay Technology Forum, Marketer of the Year by Tampa Bay American Advertising Federation, and Ultimate CEO by the Tampa Bay Business Journals. A lot of great accolades there, I would say. Kevin has served on numerous boards, including the University of South Florida College of Advertising, YPO Digital Marketing and Media Chair for the Southern Region, Chair of the CEO Council of Tampa Bay, and more. When not helping Spinutech's clients grow, Kevin enjoys boating, playing a round of golf, skiing, and just about any other outdoor activity. He is full of signature sayings such as, "The easy thing is to do what the client asks, but the right thing is to do what the client needs," and "Plan your work your plan." But I like this one. The most popular is, "There's an old saying," and apparently we'll hear him say that many more times and maybe through the podcast. So
Probably.
Kevin, welcome.
Jimmy, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, that was an awesome bio to read. I like the little personal things at the end with your sayings. Now,
Yes.
I got to ask, you mentioned some of your team helped put this together.
Yes.
Did you add the sayings, or did they add that as well?
They did, and they did, and I'm sure it'll come up today. I say there's an old saying, and my team will joke I have 1 million of them or more.
Yeah.
But often those sayings are replicated because they provide value and they provide education. And so, I do love the one, the easy thing to do is what the client asks, but the right thing to do what the client needs. And so all too often, I have to remind our team that because they think to make clients happy, is always to tell them yes and to serve them. But that's not why our clients are paying us. Our clients aren't paying us to tell them yes. Our clients are paying us to help them grow.
Right.
And if they knew how to do it quickly and effectively, they wouldn't need us. And so I use these old sayings because I don't want them to think that they're my own unique belief system. I'm repurposing ones that have been used over time because they've helped others see things from a different lens, and hopefully through that different lens, they act differently as a result of that.
Right. And hopefully there's some sayings you also mentioned that were from your days at Prep too.
Yeah.
Miss Maxwell, she left some things for you.
Absolutely. Yes.
And kind of going off of that, but you graduated from Prep in 1985.
Yes.
I've seen you most recently with the golf outings.
Yes.
You coming out and supporting that, which has been awesome. I mean, you guys had about 8 or 10 of your classmates.
We had 2 foursomes this year.
Yeah, that was awesome.
We're going to have 3 next.
That was so cool.
Yes.
You could see the bond that you still have with your classmates to this day, but take us back to when you were in 7th, 8th grade, living in Erie. Why did you decide to attend Cathedral Prep?
So I went to Our Lady's Christian School, which is now St. Jude. I don't think there was any decision that my pathway out of OLCS was not going to be to go to Cathedral Prep.
Yeah.
And, I think that was just, following the footsteps of others ahead of you. And so, as I would be, 6th grade, 7th grade, whatever that might be, and I'm looking at the 7th grader or 8th graders who are 2, 3, 4 school grades above me, you look up and you see, who are the kids in those grades that are differentiating themselves from others, and what can you learn from all of those, and how can you apply some of what you see about those leaders on your own development in grade school. And so they all went to prep. And so, it was never a decision, it was never a consideration. I knew my scholastic path was going to be leaving grade school and going into Cathedral Prep.
Yeah. And I can relate to that similarly. There was never even a second guess in my mind of where I was going to go. There was no exploring other options. In my mind, I went to Blessed Sacrament, and then
Right.
my path was I was going to prep.
Yes.
And that was just how it was going to be.
Yeah.
And, some of my best memories are those relationships that I've formed for my years in grade school, but then carrying on to prep. And I was just at a wedding Saturday, and we're reminiscing about our times
Right.
playing baseball and doing all this stuff. When you look back at your time at prep, I mean, what are some of the things that really stand out to you as some of your favorite memories, so to speak?
Yeah, this is going to come across as twisted, but, I absolutely think while the friendship and the bonds have become lifelong, and it's amazing at this stage of our life, they're reinvigorated, especially with my opportunity to come back to Pennsylvania in the summers. But I actually think the foundation of the prep way of doing things and doing things the right way probably was the biggest seed that sprouted the best in me and helped me build a character that I don't know if I could have replicated had I gone to another institution for high school. And, I ended up going to college at the University of South Florida in Tampa, great school and all of that. But the difference between graduating with 191 kids and then being part of a student body of 40,000 was pretty significant. There was no direction, no mentorship. You went from being, Cathedral Prep, you went from being well-managed, well-disciplined, wearing a coat and tie to school every day, to going into a free-for-all. And I don't know if I didn't have my Cathedral Prep foundation, if I would have been able to go through that free-for-all and end up in an outcome where I'm at today. I got a good education at University of South Florida, but I went from strict foundation, strict discipline to the wild, wild west, or I should call it the wild, wild east. But the foundation of discipline, the foundation of knowing what's right and wrong, the foundation of integrity, morality, that is something that college didn't bring any value to. Discipline maybe not, but the others for sure. I didn't feel college was a good provider of any of that foundation of building character, and Cathedral Prep, nailed it over the park on that side.
Yeah, well, that's pretty cool to hear. Just your experience going to the university where if you didn't have that prep way, so to speak,
Yes.
those foundations to set you up for success in college, I'm sure you saw plenty of your peers in college that didn't make it because they didn't have the right foundation from
Sure.
these years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the benefits for sure, and something that Father Jabo, who was the headmaster here for all those years that I was a student, would always say, prep is not a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision.
Yes, and that's well said.
Yeah.
Sounds like an old saying.
It does sound like an old saying. We're going to write that one down.
Yeah, I think that's an old saying. Father Jabo, yes.
There should be a quote, a wall of quotes on somewhere here that says, there's an old saying, and it's all, Father Jabo said this.
I may add it as one of my favorites. I hadn't heard it before, but that's one I'd repeat.
So we talked you just kind of hit on this one too, and the next question I was kind of lining up for you was talking about your experiences at prep and how it shaped your career path. But can you maybe talk a little bit more, because you talked about the foundations.
Yes.
Was there any impact on the entrepreneurial path that you took and how that even impacted you with getting into tech in different spaces? Were there things at prep that helped you get to that sort of sector?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jimmy. I think there's a long and a short answer. The short answer is yes, for sure. But I think, again, here's an old saying. Here's my first old saying.
There we go.
The first old saying is, you are who you hang with. Or there's another saying that parents may say about their children, and it goes like this: show me their friends and I'll show you their future. And those old sayings are really who you surround yourself will help build the character and the values and maybe the drive that you have. And at prep, I was surrounded with a lot of people who are going to become high achievers.
Yeah.
And our parents invested in private education to separate ourselves. Another old saying, and I'm hopefully not going to say too many more of these, but I had a friend of mine who was in charge of a peer group, the CEO peer group that I belonged to, called YPO, or Young Presidents Organization. And he was the chair of YPO Florida. And when he was turning the chairmanship over to the next chair, he said this. He said, my mentor once said to me, if you want to soar with the eagles, you got to separate yourself from the buzzards. And he said, as I look around this room I see nothing but soaring eagles. And I feel that was my association with prep. I found myself soaring with eagles. And our parents, spent dollars to give us an opportunity to be around the like-minded peer group who were hopefully going to be high achievers. And so I think that foundation was a benchmark for me to just challenge myself to not want to fall out of that Soaring Eagle group.
Yeah.
And it didn't necessarily spark my career in technology or marketing, but it did spark my competitive drive to always set the bar high for myself, regardless of what I did professionally, personally, physically, spiritually, whatever it might be, to create a high bar and surround yourselves with others who were creating that same high bar themselves.
That's very well said. And, I look back on my time as well, and I often relate very similarly to say, people often ask, what's your favorite, thing about being a student at prep? And it was always the day-to-day camaraderie.
Right.
But the way you phrase that, saying that competitive drive,
yes,
the bar being set high, those are the things that were values instilled in me to continue to strive and reach for more. Whether it was the teachers, the coaches, but also your friends and your peer groups of, you're being challenged in the classroom, but so are they. And it's a little competitive there. Competitive on the field. Competitive just doing dumb boy stuff, when you're prep.
Yeah.
And whatnot. So that spirit of definitely that competitiveness definitely was something that I always grew up with. And then being at prep just helped me even grow that more so. And when you're saying soar as eagles, I was thinking, first you were rolling as ramblers,
Right. So we can maybe change that around to some other mammals out there than birds. But Jimmy, as you talk about that competitiveness too, and, striving to compete at the top, I think that absolutely is so true. I think it also has a way to support the bottom end of that too, because nobody wanted to lose their opportunity to stay at prep.
Yeah.
And so there were high expectations here. So whether you wanted to compete to be at the top from an athletic perspective or top from an academic perspective, certainly there was that friendly competition that existed there, but there was an unspoken competition to not so underperform that you lost your opportunity to be there. And so if you weren't trying to compete at the top, which I wasn't, I wasn't trying to be a academic or a top athlete, but certainly I didn't want to be taken out from the bottom either. And so it created that environment where you just perform better because you're around others who are being managed to perform better. And, I think it built great character for myself and our fellow classmates. Yeah.
Well, I would say if, you're crediting a lot of your success to the foundation that prep gave you, I mean, you've definitely gone on to do some awesome things, and I'm excited to get into, talking with you about some of these things that you've accomplished. I always like reading the bios for people, the intro, because we get a lot of different listeners on the podcast, a lot of different backgrounds and where they're at in life, and they might have known your name or they don't know you at all. So just hearing the bio gets them a little sense of who you are and what you've done.
Sure.
But can you talk to us a little bit about Spinutech?
Sure.
Maybe describe a little bit about some of the biggest challenges you've faced while growing the company and just some different things about the journey you've had with that company.
Yeah, so Spinutech's what I call an end-to-end digital advertising company.
Okay.
We've got about 150 or so people across the United States. 1/3 of our team helps our clients design, develop, host, manage, and maintain their complex websites. And 2/3 of our team helps our clients attract more customers to that through digital advertising tactics around search engine optimization, paid search, organic social media, paid social media, email marketing, things of that nature. But ultimately, we help our clients grow by using digital tactics around their website and digital advertising to help them generate new customers or maybe grow existing clients. What are the challenges in my industry? So, my industry didn't exist when I went to high school.
Yeah.
My industry didn't exist when I went to college.
Right.
And so I'm in an industry that doesn't have a how-to for dummies book written about it. I'm the dummy who's trying to figure out the how-to. And so it's been an industry where I say a year in the digital advertising sector could be the equivalent of a decade in many other industries. It's constantly changing. And that's fascinating to one degree, but it means you can never let your foot off the gas.
Yeah.
You constantly have to be deploying curiosity and discipline to continue to figure out how to implement digital to help our clients grow and help our agency grow. At the end of the day, we're a professional services firm, not very much different than a law firm, not much different than an accounting firm. Our clients can choose to do their own digital advertising. They can design and develop their own website. They can do their own digital advertising. They can file their own tax return. They can represent themselves in legal matters, but at the end of the day, companies decide to hire a law firm, they decide to hire a CPA firm, they decide to hire a digital agency because they think that those agencies, those firms bring more expertise to the table and that the expense they're paying to those firms is going to net them in a more positive outcome than if they represented themselves.
Yeah.
To be at the helm of a company like that, it's a lot of pressure to make sure you're bringing that value back to your clients and you're providing a work environment that your team members enjoy. And so, while there is no, Digital for Dummies book out there, we're constantly having to be curious in chasing after not necessarily the bleeding edge, because I think the bleeding edge often fizzles out, runs out of blood, but how to define what the leading edge is that's not investing too much into what's not going to work out, but not too resting on the laurels of the tested, tried and true that's falling to the wayside of being successful. And so it's a constant balancing act, as marketing often is. Marketing's a lot of trial and error, but when you find the sweet spot, you continue to invest in it until it no longer maintains that sweet spot status.
Yeah.
And that's been my career. It's been an opportunity to continue to try to find ways to help our clients grow, leveraging digital tactics. People always ask me, so Kevin, you're like, what do you see as the vision of digital for the next 5 to 10 years? Right. I never answer the question because I really don't know what that's going to be. But I know how Spinutech's going to help our clients. We always have to stay a couple steps ahead of our education, curiosity, experimentation, implementation above and beyond our clients and bring them success in that. And when we could continue to provide them value in and above where their current knowledge base is, we'll continue to find opportunities to serve clients. The day we're no longer ahead of them and not able to provide value to them of what they could implement themselves is the day they start to decide to bring it in-house. But controversially, if I'm always bringing them the bleeding edge stuff that they get super excited about, like, oh my gosh, we're going to use AI for everything going forward. That sounds so cool, man. I can't wait. If it doesn't work, I've failed them as well.
Right.
And it goes back to that saying that you started in the intro today. The easy thing to do is what the client asks. The right thing to do what the client needs. I have a lot of clients who want to hang on to what used to work and not want to change because they're afraid it's going to upset the apple cart, so to speak. But the apple cart's already upset. They just don't want to acknowledge it.
Right.
I also have a lot of clients who are begging for every new AI tool out there, thinking it's going to be the next silver bullet to success, which often isn't the case. It's just an opportunity to learn what's not working.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly having to balance the tested, tried and true, the bleeding edge. And that's what being at the helm of a digital agency is today, is working with an amazing team with a good set of responsible curiosity to help determine new paths that our clients can be successful in helping generate new customers who meet their ideal customer profile in an acquisition cost that makes reasonable sense to them, and continue to help them grow and at the same time help my coworkers grow and help my company grow as well.
Yeah. Well, I like the analogy you made to a digital agency similar to a CPA or a law firm.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very good point to say. You're an expert advisor in this field, right? And they could very well have somebody in-house that they want to do it. However, it's the value that your company brings to your clients that allows you to have their business and to represent them.
Yeah.
And to even take it a step further, you're not going to be always having the flashy things to show them and do because it might not be the right fit for their company at the time. So it really takes a lot of intentional strategy, planning, focus for each individual client to say what's best for them right now. Might not be the same what's best for company B that you're working with compared to company A. Absolutely.
I mean, there's we probably invoice 400 plus clients a month, and I don't think any of them have a parallel strategy.
Right.
It's unique to each one. Each one has a different customer profile. They're competing in a different vertical market. They have a different competitor concentration mix with different advertising budgets and tactics. Everything we do is unique and specific to that client. Because if I applied a cookie cutter approach, I wouldn't be able to bring value as consistent as I can if I provide an individual approach.
Right.
It costs more, it takes more time, but now more individually, I'm helping each client with a unique strategy, executed, measured, than I am selling a copper, gold, and silver package. And sometimes it fits, sometimes it doesn't. That's not the agency that we want to run.
Are you coming at me for my Legacy Gala sponsorship level?
No. In your line, it makes you do for a living, that's important. But in my line of work, it doesn't work so well.
That's funny. As soon as you're listing the colors, the gold, silver, copper, like that. I was like, yeah, I've been there, done that, and kind of, moved on from doing that type of thing. Because, each company so I do a lot of corporate relations stuff here at Prep. So I work with a lot of the businesses for their giving. And no two company is the same, right? So everything you're talking about, I kind of apply on the fundraising side of things, where I'll sit down with the owner of the company and we'll kind of talk about, here's what you did last year. Here's some options to consider for this year. Here's what do you want to do, and just kind of talk it through with them.
Right.
To your point, everything is not always just black and white. Here's the platinum, gold, silver level, so to speak.
Right.
Everyone's got different needs and desires they want to fulfill. Your company, SpinUtech, has also won numerous awards. I'm sure it makes you very proud with the amount of work and effort you and your team as a whole put into that.
Yes.
Is there any certain accolade you're most proud of, and why for that?
I haven't earned the award that I will be most proud of yet. We were a finalist for the United States Chamber of Commerce Business of the Year a few years back. Only 7 companies in the country are awarded it. They split it up in 7 regions. So for the United States Chamber of Commerce to recognize my business as a finalist for Business of the Year, winning the Southeast region, there's not many companies who ever get a chance to have that. A few years back as well, Microsoft named us as their Global Partner of the Year. So only one company in the entire globe got to be known as Microsoft's Global Partner of the Year. And it was for an implementation that I helped for a global travel company to go to market with a new website and a new marketing approach. There was probably 15 different travel brands out there. And we implemented a solution on Microsoft technology, took it away from Oracle, which I think is probably why Microsoft liked it so much. But we were able to help this travel company with 15 brands switch into a Microsoft-backed website and some digital marketing campaigns, and help their company grow significantly with significant reductions in operational costs. And it earned the number one agency of the year from Microsoft perspective. And so, I never aspired to have those type of accolades, and I feel blessed that we were able to get all of those. But the one I haven't won yet, which would be the one that I'll be most proud of, is I want to be Employer of the Year on a national level. I want to know that what we're doing is so valuable to our coworkers at SpinUtech to win a national award that we are the Employer of the Year from a national, like it'd be great if the U.S. Chamber of Commerce recognized us not as the Business of the Year, but the Employer of the Year. The day that we earn that award, that's the day that I'm really going to be satisfied.
Why so? I mean, there's obviously some reasons why that you feel that way. Why is that such an accomplishment that you're excited for?
One, I haven't earned it yet, so competitive, never not set goals high. 2, at the end of the day, like a CPA firm or a law firm or any other professional services firms, truly what we sell is our people's time. So at the end of the day, if you're a car dealer, your inventory is cars and parts and service. If you're Home Depot, you know what your inventory is. At the end of the day, we sell people's time for a living. To know that our team was so delighted working at SpinUtech that we earned their trust and their vote to be recognized as Employer of the Year would be something that I would strive to, I strive to have the opportunity that we've done such a good job at creating such a great culture that not only makes them feel SpinUtech's a great place to work, but that's got to be, our team's happiness is relative to the business decisions our company makes, but also to the happiness of our clients too. It's tough to be a really super happy coworker if you're having a tough time with the client, and it's easier to have if you're having a good client relations and good client performance. And so, I believe the day that we get to a point where we can earn the opportunity to become Employer of the Year at a national level, we've absolutely crushed it at the business decisions we're making internally and the success we're bringing for our clients. I think that's the benchmark where I feel that the stakeholders we serve our clients, we serve our coworkers, we serve our company. I think the best metric I could ever say we've hit all of them perfectly would be winning the team's award to be Employer of the Year. Yeah, absolutely. There's so many things that, to your point, it's people's time, right? Yeah.
Their responsibility working with clients, and for you to be able to say we're one of the best employers is because you take care of your people, they're in a good environment, they're doing good work, and they're proud of that too. There's
absolutely.
joy in what they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's, and so, winning some of those other awards, certainly, from the Microsoft perspective, we were recognized for implementing a very complex project that had a very good outcome.
Yeah.
From the Business of the Year, we were evaluated by many different things, including client satisfaction and coworker satisfaction and company performance and some of that nature. But I think the gauge I really want to measure is the one we just spoke about.
And one of the things I was reading in your bio as well is he has spoken alongside major brands, including Google, Facebook, Carnival Cruise Lines, General Motors, presented the keynote at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I mean, there's so many cool, it's not an award, but you got asked to speak at a major event like that. I guess, can you talk to us a little bit about what that's been like for you? Maybe the first time you were really asked to speak at a large event, was there a lot of nervousness and pressure?
Yeah, I mean, there's for sure the butterflies. You get on stage and you're like, how hard have I rehearsed? And all that. Yeah, absolutely for sure. But the joy of all of that is the fact that people are asking you to bring some subject matter expertise and takeaway value to an audience, and that's fulfilling to know that you're considered a thought leader, and that you're going to go speak next to the chief marketing officer of Carnival Cruise Lines. You're going to go speak next to the chief marketing officer of Facebook or something like, and you're on that same stage and the same platform at that time. That the thought leadership that you can bring to the table in front of an audience of hundreds of people or thousands of people is of value that they're putting their reputation on the line to have you up on stage. So first of all, it's satisfying to know that what you might be able to bring to that audience is going to drive value, and they're willing to put their reputation at risk to do so. It's tremendous pressure as well. But at the same time, in delivering that, it's a great opportunity for our company to get exposure to people that we don't have exposure to.
Right.
And so, by being a thought leader, and I host a podcast, Jimmy, like you do, I host a podcast too, and the whole intention of it is to create thought leadership, and I interview inspiring leaders who are willing to share their insights and experiences to help others grow. That's what I think I'm doing when I get a chance to speak. I'm sharing my insights and experiences to help others grow. And hopefully that's their outcome, but it also created an exposure opportunity for Spinutech and myself, which certainly creates some new client opportunities to complement the value I was driving. Probably had some value back to the business as well.
You want to put a plug in for your podcast now, since we brought it up? Go ahead.
The Growth Fire podcast. Go find it. It's amazing. You can find it on our Spinutech website, www.spinutech.com. Didn't mean to put a plug in there for you.
No. I wanted to ask you about it because I know when we talked back at the golf outing, you mentioned you have a podcast, and I was going to ask you about it today, and I've definitely something I'm gonna listen to and check out for sure.
I've had some amazing guests. I've been very fortunate to have some guests that I didn't know who I did some outreach to, who were chief marketing officers or chief revenue officers for some amazing companies. My first outreach guest was the chief marketing officer of Kenneth Cole. Been with him for over 20 years. He's a great guy. But I was very impressed that he saw my past guest list and felt like he wanted to contribute on the Growth Fire podcast. Wow. And since then, I've had just a great amount of opportunities of connecting with brands that I knew. Obviously, I knew who Kenneth Cole was. I didn't know some others, but they're large publicly traded companies who I've done some outreach to, and asked their chief marketing officers and chief growth officers if they'd want to share their insights and experiences to help others grow. And I've been surprised how many have said yes.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, it's created some client opportunities as a result of it, because they've learned more about who Spinutech was, and they realize there's some gaps in their digital performance that Spinutech might be a good fit for. And so, my intent of creating some thought leadership, Jimmy, going back, how did I get to where I'm at today? I certainly credit my foundation at Prep of creating, a good foundation of character and drive. But secondarily, I think I am where I am today because, going back to that, surrounding yourself with great people, mentors have been amazing to me. And as I saw my career trajectory, I always say, through my own lens, it was a set of binoculars. But around my mentors, all of a sudden, they were bringing telescopes to the conversations. And my opportunity to set my personal and professional goals without my surrounding of mentors would be much smaller than it became with mentors. And that's the intent of my podcast. Now, the intent of my podcast is I feel very fortunate I am where I am today, but I wouldn't be there on a self-guided journey without the influence of being around great people and great education. And so the Growth Fire is an opportunity to give back, and it's an opportunity for others to get inspired by others who have great insights and experiences to share. And it continues to let me continue to be a thought leader too, and the pressure of being the thought leader on my own organically driven content is off a little bit, because I'm interviewing amazing people with amazing stories. And every podcast, I'm taking notes. I'm writing stuff down because I'm learning so much on it. And I have a voracious appetite to learn. I love being around brilliant people. I love learning. And every podcast, there's just note after note after note of things I'm learning on this. But I'm also giving an opportunity for others to listen and have an opportunity to learn some things they don't know in their journey yet. And hopefully it influences them to have a telescope to see their future, not just the binoculars as well.
Right. And kind of going off of that with, having people on to share, what they're doing and their experiences are. I would imagine there's people listening to this episode of this podcast that they're young entrepreneurs, or they are in a job right now where they want to go be an entrepreneur, right? And they're in a position that, to hear what you've done maybe sounds daunting, right?
Yeah.
To look at the end of the picture, maybe how would I even get there? But if you could go back to give us some advice for a young entrepreneur, somebody looking to just start their own business, what advice would you have for that person?
Yeah, I'll give that advice, but I think I want to pick up on what you just said too. I had no aspiration that I would be running a 150-person digital advertising agency. I had no vision, no aspiration. I had no career plan for that. I left prep thinking I was become a dentist, right? And so, and there was like digital advertising and websites weren't anything that was even on the radar yet.
That's funny.
So I think everyone in those shoes you're talking about sees that as a daunting gap, and I would be one of those people who had no idea that I would be able to get to where I'm at today. Statistically, in the United States, only 4% of agencies get over 50 people. So we're a very, very small percentage who, probably in like the top 2% in our industry from a size perspective. And I feel very fortunate and very blessed for that. But it wasn't originally it wasn't a vision. It wasn't by design. I think, my experience share and insights to provide, or advice, as you asked, is never stop learning and never stop seeking opportunities. And I have another old saying. Here it goes, another one.
Love it.
But be careful what you ask for, because when you get there, you'll change your mind. So, Jimmy, I remember if we could only get to 25 people, right? I remember if we could only get to X dollar bill rate, if I could only get to break $1 million in revenue. I mean, I had all of these goals, dreams, aspirations, but when I got to 25 people, or I got to the first $1 million in revenue, all those things, I said to myself, I'm not satisfied yet. There's a lot more opportunity here, and I'm not going to rest on those laurels. I just need to figure out what the next goal setting is, and it's probably a different path as you take each step of your goal planning. And so, where I'm at today from a foundation perspective wasn't a vision, but as I took steps in that journey, I continued to reset my vision, and I continued to set new goals and bars. And every time I got there, I reset the bar with higher aspirations. And I surrounded myself with people who helped me dream bigger, learn from their experiences. And one of it was mentors, but the other one for those entrepreneurs is surround themselves in entrepreneur peer groups. I mentioned earlier I belong to something called YPO, Young Presidents Organization. It's been very influential in me seeing the lens of business through others. Very active at the Tampa Chamber of Commerce. There was the CEO Council of Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Technology Forum, the American Marketing Association, the American Advertising Federation, all of these organizations. And I learned early in my journey, I never wanted to be just a member of those organizations. If I wanted to get something out of it, I needed to serve that organization. And so I often very quickly asked to see how I could get on the board of directors of those organizations. And many times I became the chair of those organizations. And it wasn't to have the recognition, it was to learn in the journey. There was so much I learned in just these organizations being part of their strategic planning and part of their decision-making of board members who didn't agree and didn't share the same vision and all those types of things. It wasn't much different than the internal board meetings I was having at my company with my leadership team. We had different perspectives, we had different insights. We weren't always aligned on goals, but at some point, someone had to make a decision, and you had to seek alignment, or maybe it wasn't the right seat for them. And so, long answer to your advice question, but set goals, but when you reach them, reset goals. And at some point, what seemed to be so far away starts to not be so distant.
Yeah.
Secondarily, I can't suggest often enough the importance of mentors. My original mentors, we never had conversation that they were my mentor. Just when I look back in the rearview mirror, gosh, they were my amazing mentors, friends, peers. My last question on my podcast is, did you have a mentor or mentors, and how did they create your journey of growth? And so I ask that on every one of my podcasts. And thirdly is join professional organizations, CEO peer groups, entrepreneur peer groups, get involved in some of those. And again, in my journey, it wasn't just becoming a member, it was becoming an active board member, because the forced involvement was so much greater at that level. And so here's another one. There's an old saying, but you get out of things what you put into it. I think there's one value of being a member, but there's a significant greater value of being an active participant, getting involved in their boards, and you're putting more effort into it, but you're getting more effort out of it as well.
Yeah, and I think any business book that I've read that talks about the principle of going the extra mile, which is everything you're talking about right now. That principle of going the extra mile, meaning, just becoming a member, good job, you're a part of a group. But to go that extra step, that extra mile, to be more involved and to take that initiative on to say, you know what, I'm not just going to be a part of this, I'm going to join the board. I'm going to learn what they're doing at this level, because it's going to benefit your growth professionally, personally, for your company. Yeah,
it's absolutely the journey I had, and I still to this day am involved in many of these organizations, and I'm still continuing to get a great amount of value from these, and I don't think I'll ever stop.
Yeah, and that's part of the goal, right? Is that you're continually learning, you're continually growing. It doesn't end, right?
No. And again, I'm in an industry, say a year into my industry is like a decade in many others. So if you're, there's an old saying, again, here we go again, gosh, I said it 40 times now, but there's an old saying, if you're not growing, you're dying. Well, I think in my industry, it's absolutely the case. Yeah. I think if you take a year off in the digital space, you're going to have a hard time catching back up. And so, for these young entrepreneurs who are, thinking about, how do I take steps to grow in my journey, think about the end, but think more about the next step and the next step. And just know when you get to that next step, you're not giving up. And, the last thing I'll say is this may appear like it's easy, fun, all of those things. I will tell you, aside of having a great peer group and surrounding yourself with brilliant people, there is another old saying, there is no shortcut to whatever level of success you want to call. There is no shortcut. Yeah. And I think a lot of people would like to be in a different stage of their career, but they're trying to find the shortcut. And in my journey, there's never been a shortcut. I've never been the smartest. I've never been the most articulate, never been the best looking, whatever you want to call it. But I believe that no one or barely anyone has ever outworked me. And so it's that commitment, it's that discipline, it's that foundation I received here at Prep. At the end of the day, what I didn't have in smarts or articulation or whatever it might have been to help be successful, I was able to get past some of those areas by being the most hardworking, disciplined, tenacious, attack dog. And I never lost or didn't meet a goal because I threw in the white towel. Yeah. I never, ever let lack of working extra hard, to your point, going the extra mile, that was never an area where I ever disappointed myself. Probably to too far on the side of over commitment, but I was never going to let my lack of discipline be the reason I didn't accomplish my goals.
Right. You knew if it was going to be, it was up to me, in a sense, right? You were going to do the work, you were going to make it happen. And I think the other thing too is, especially like my age group of this generation, there's so many videos on social media or, posts you'll see about escape the 9-to-5 by doing this and that. And it's like, makes it sound so easy, this pipe dream that you can just magically become a millionaire if you just start doing digital marketing on the side.
Well, I mean, there's the book, The 4-Hour Work Week, right?
Tim Ferriss,
I've got 4 hours under my belt by 9:30 every morning. It's just, so that was my journey. It doesn't mean everybody's, and I'll take, a quick short story on that. My older son graduated with a finance degree from Florida State College, went directly into commercial banking. And it was a small community bank out of Florida. It was a Florida-based community bank. And he was a commercial lender, an associate commercial lender, his first job out of school, became a commercial lender. And they had a culture where I think they were really like a 9 to 4:45 kind of company. And I talk to my son sometimes on his way into work or on his way home from work, and it'd be 8:45 in the morning. I'm like, hey man, what you doing? He's like, I'm on my way to work. I'm like, it's 8:45. Thought you're coming back from lunch, and so like, no, Dad, no, nobody's there. Nobody's there earlier. I'm like, wouldn't you want to show your boss you're there at 7:45 or whatever? He's like, Dad, he's not there. And then it'd be 5 to 5, and I'd talk to him like, I'd head to the gym or whatever this and that. I'm like, wouldn't you want to show your boss? Like, Dad, they left at 4:30, and so we'd had this conversation, and one day he said to me, hey, Dad, I know what you did to get to where you're at, but I'm going to do it a different way, and I'm going to end up at the same outcome. And I was like, wow, that's really powerful, and I don't disagree with you. If you can find a way to get there and not have to do it that way, that's the right path to take. Don't ever. And now he's left commercial banking. He's now more of in a position where he's in sales. Yeah. He's in private aviation jet sales, and less than half of his income is salary based. The bigger trigger of his income is commission driven. He's not waiting until 9 o'clock in the morning to start answering email and pick up the phone, and he's not done it 5 to 5 anymore either. But he's found something that's more rewarding than a salary-driven position in a commercial bank, and it's given him that carrot to be able to go after. Right. And I still think he's able to do it a smarter way than I did, but I think he's also found that there's no substitute for hard work too.
He's realizing a lot of, there's an old saying by Dad where actually a lot of truths in there too.
Yeah. But he was right too. I think the next generation will find more efficient and effective ways, and just because that's the way the last generation did it doesn't mean that's the way the next generation has to. Sure. And I think every generation has to accept that. Yeah. We don't want next generations to end up with less outcome, but we don't want to think prior generations who did a lot of what the old generation did, think that that's the dictatorial way of everybody has to do it going forward too. So I'm about the innovation. I'm about the opportunity to be smarter instead of harder. And so I didn't disagree when he made the comment. Yeah, I think one of the pitfalls people can fall into is just not thinking through those options of what they can do to be more efficient, more effective, and just, the old mantra, doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity, right? You're not looking to improve or be more efficient. But I also think there's things from the past that we can learn from and implement as well. So there's different principles that you've learned through business that they might not be as tactical now as they were 20 years ago in your industry. Right. However, some of the principles that led to you coming to those outcomes could benefit what you're implementing with a client today. So there's everything that we can take and apply, but the biggest thing is we need to learn how to think and process information to help us excel and grow. Absolutely. Now, when it comes to leadership, so kind of making a little transition from talking about new entrepreneur and the work ethic, but now when you think of like being a leader of an organization, I mean, you're responsible for, like you said, almost over 150 people across the country. The success you've had in business, when you kind of put on the hat of like you're a leader, what do you think are some of the most essential qualities that it takes to be an effective leader in today's market? Yeah, that's a great question. That's something I still strive to find the total answer for. That's a never-ending challenge for me to continue to learn in the journey of how to become an effective leader. I think first and foremost, running a business with integrity is the foundation. Clients don't want to be around a company where they feel there's a lack of integrity, and I don't think coworkers do either. Regardless of what the money's involved, I wouldn't be where I am today, career fulfillment-wise, if I thought anything we do lacked integrity. I don't think I'd be good at representing new business to clients if I thought we lacked integrity. So I think the very foundation of being a good leader is having an organization that's committed to integrity. Around that, the products or services you order and stuff like that. But I think as you set the foundation of what's most important to your company, it's operating with integrity. So I think that's critical. I think secondarily, making decisions with as much logic as possible and the least amount of emotion is another good, effective way of being leaders. And, often, a lot of times, emotions far influence our passion than logic does. We can be in a really good mood and make some decisions, and we can be in a really bad mood. Here's another old saying, but they sort of say, people buy when they're either mad, sad, scared, or glad. I don't want anybody making a decision to do business with our organization, client or coworker wise, when they're mad. I don't want them to do it when they're sad. I don't want to do it when they're scared. I want to do it when they're glad. And all too often in my industry and many others, we scare our clients or we scare our coworkers into thinking they need a dependency on us. So they're not doing it as a decision of they're logically wanting to do it. They're scared. And so I think that lacks integrity in running your business when you're putting yourselves in a position where they think they can't live without you. There's consequences. And so I think getting your business where your clients and your coworkers in your company are measuring your relationships with each other on as much logical, fact-based information than the emotion of the moment helps set a better platform in which you can create alignment with everybody. When you rely on emotions, you're most likely not going to have a line set of shared understanding at the moment. But if you can get to say, we're inspecting and measuring things by as many things that can be objectively measured, now you're just debating about how to improve those metrics versus someone's having a good day or a bad day and trying to motivate the other person to see it from their perspective. I think that's a lot more difficult to run to be a good leader when you're trying to motivate somebody to buy into your way of emotional thinking than to be able to set benchmarks of expectations here that can be objectively measured and find alignment inside that.
Interesting. So what role do you think emotional stability obviously has to do with that? And I shouldn't say what role, because obviously that's essential, right? To be able to be somebody who can lean more on logic for the decision making versus tapping into an emotion of the moment, right? Fear, excitement, whatever it may be, but being able to do that. For what advice question, but somebody from your perspective, I guess I'll ask, was that very natural for you to be level-headed, or did you have to learn that? And if you could also give some recommendations on how to become more level-headed for us as better leaders. Yeah,
I don't think I came at that on my own. I think, as with any relationship, it could be with your family, it could be with your spouse, it could be with with anybody, including your coworkers and your clients. Emotions are going to come into play for sure. Yeah. Absolutely, they're going to. But when emotions are high and people have opposite sides of where they're emotionally feeling, it's difficult to get those emotional sides aligned in conversation. But if you can back away and look to be on agreed a set of measurements that you're going to take a look at, that's hard to argue. And there's an old saying, math doesn't lie, right? And so, for example, with our clients, there's different ways you can inspect the performance of digital advertising. One metric is return on ad spend. For every dollar I spend, how many more dollars back in sales do I get? I could be arguing with a client, our advertising, they may say our advertising, I was going to use a bad word, our advertising's horrible.
Yeah, it's a prep podcast.
Yes, our advertising's horrible. Our advertising's horrible. What's so horrible? It's horrible, right? Well, I'm looking to see today, you're getting a 5-to-1 return on ad spend. What's horrible on that? Well, where are you seeing 5-to-1 return on ad spend? Well, here's the information. Like, oh, well, I was looking at the other day and I didn't have this information. That'd be a realistic conversation. Sure. I may have a coworker who, wants to have a conversation about compensation or amount of days of PTO. And so let's go to salary.com and let's look up what your responsibilities are and look to see what the guideposts of, similar responsibilities and simple pay ranges in whatever geographic territories. But rather than I think you're fairly compensated and you think you're undercompensated. Let's use some third-party data out there that's more objectively been able to analyze these types of things. And so I have found to become a good leader in trying to pre-establish guardrails of where you think you'd be inspecting some things. And as long as between this high side of the guardrail and this low side of the guardrail, more often than not, you're very aligned. When things fall outside either side of that guardrail, absolutely it warrants a tough conversation.
Yeah.
And it's not unfair to say the guardrails can change too.
Sure.
But if we're just going off of how we're feeling that day, we may spend a lot of wasted time disagreeing without really knowing what the facts are.
Yeah.
And I think when you get to the true facts and find people aligned on how they want to create guardrails around facts, you're going to be more aligned to continue to figure out how you can fine-tune those facts to score on the high side of what you want them to be, and not debating subjective opinions about different matters.
Well, and it's cool to hear you talk on many different topics through this podcast conversation, that it's so clear how client first you are, how people oriented you are, your employees and coworkers, the client first mentality, where I can see very clearly how much people can trust you, because just that simple story about dealing with somebody who might be looking at compensation, and instead of saying there's a disagreement between you think they're paid fairly and they think they're not, it's, hey, I'm humble enough as a leader to say, let's look at what the statistics say.
Yes.
Let's use a third-party credible source to let me know. And if you are unfairly compensated, let's fix that.
We'll fix it, right?
If you're fairly compensated for where you're at, we have to have a different conversation.
yeah. But it really just get people to be focused on an aligned set of objective things, and in the conversation with the coworker on salary misalignment, at the end of the day, if you continue to disagree, the emotions continue to swell and get frustrated, and at some point, one or the other may make an emotional decision to separate.
Yeah.
Rather than get to finding an objective way to look at those things. Same with the client, you know? And so it's, from my leadership perspective, and I have a lot of development to continue to do there, but from my leadership perspective, trying to find objective metrics to be able to measure against and determining whether we're in a good spot, we're in a need to fix spot, or we're in a great spot. I think that helps those relationships in leadership for me, try to rally people around objective information to review, and avoid a lot of wasted time and high emotional energy, which can often end up in not the outcome either party wants.
Right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that all, because that's things that I've been jotting down notes that you've been talking, and things that I'm going to take further in my studies of leadership as well, continue to grow myself professionally.
And Jim, I'll say one last thing there too. Yeah,
please.
And this is another huge component of leadership from my perspective. Consistency. Consistency. Everybody, if there's special privileges, everybody wants to be on the special privileges team. And those who aren't are resentful, frustrated, demoralized, demeaned, and a bunch of other things I could describe about them. Consistency is incredibly important to create an opportunity where everyone respects that leadership. When it's inconsistent, those who are getting the benefits think life is great, and those who feel disrespected wonder if they're the right organization or leadership. And so when you can create that objective ways of looking at the business from multiple different perspectives, and you're consistent on your decision making using those, I think you establish leadership confidence. And when you're inconsistent with those, you run the risk of disaligning people, and that disalignment is going to create friction and frustration. And then I think the last thing is setting accurate expectations. And again, I'll use another old saying, but there's an old saying, uncommunicated expectations are future frustrations. As a leader, you have to be comfortable. I don't want to say comfortable. You have to be consistent at delivering all the expectation, not just the easy deliver part. And it's not comfortable. I'm never comfortable delivering information people don't want to hear. It's the thing I dislike about my job whatsoever, except when I didn't deliver all the message and having to deal with the uncommunicated expectation that's created frustration and friction. The least thing I don't like is having to deal with a different set of expectations that have never been communicated before, and we're misaligned in what we're managing to. So a leader has to be 100% committed. I don't want to say comfortable, because I've never been comfortable doing it, but they have to be committed to delivering all the information, all the expectations, not just the easy to deliver. So it's very easy at review time to tell, Susie or Susie or Sam, hey, I've got a 10% increase for you this year, but it may not be so interested. I'm going to give you a 7% increase this year, but you can get a 10% increase if you can fix these 3 things. And here's how we're going to measure those, and here's where we're going to inspect them. Or Sam, this year's not going to be a good year for you. These 4 or 5 things out here, you did some great things over here, but these 4 or 5 things are holding you back in your career development. Or not turning the other cheek when bad behavior happens. It's all too often to turn the other cheek and say, if they do it again, I'll let them know. But by doing that, you're just continuing to empower. It may be bad behavior, it may be need for training, but you have to be consistent. You have to be outspoken on the good, which is easy, but on the not so good, the less you do that, the more you're just preventing your company from growing. You're preventing your coworkers from growing, and you're not being fair to those in their own development as well. Right. And if they don't like your messaging, then maybe they're not a fit for that business, and it's not meant to be a threat. But neither should be frustration and friction in those relationships either. Yeah. And being confident with clients, telling clients no. No, you don't believe this is the right tactics for them. It goes back to the easy thing to do is the easy thing to do is what they say, not what they ask. Yeah. But it's telling them no. It's not agreeing to committing your coworkers to expectations that are beyond what you set with your coworkers. In sales, it's easy to say yes to everything, but now you got to bring that message back to your team, which is a contradictory message you brought back to your team. Your team wants to know that you're willing to hold a client accountable to the expectations you set internally, and you need to own that. You need to be consistent with all of that. When you're inconsistent, your team thinks that the clients are more important, and vice versa. If you're giving your team a lot, if I always joke with this, if I gave my clients everything they want faster turnaround and lower bill rates. If I ask my coworkers, they want more PTO and higher wages. They're the exact opposite of each other. But if you
here you are in the middle.
Yeah, but this goes back to having a solid set of actionable, measurable information. And if the right management and leadership, you can give everybody almost everything they're asking for. How can you help your clients? How can you help your coworkers become more efficient so they can get those deadlines done sooner? How can you help your coworkers become more efficient with more training and more tools so maybe we can give them an extra day off next year? Like it's a challenge to leadership to not ask people to work harder or work for less. It's a challenge to become more effective and efficient. And as leadership, you have to challenge yourselves to that. And then when you've created all of that, it's holding clients accountable and coworkers accountable to these are kind of how your metrics are, and you're listening and responding to your clients wanting faster work, not necessarily responding to lower costs because our salary pressure has been outrageous, but I'm also responding to my clients wanting more, my coworkers wanting more time off and things of that nature, and it's creating a system in place that can help get a lot of that done, being forthright with what those metrics and benchmarks are, and then being consistent.
Yeah, it almost sounds like so much to be able to go through and evaluate, but when you have the core principles, the guiding foundations, the things that you've been talking about through this podcast episode, consistency as the basis, integrity as one of the core principles. When you have those things as your leading benchmark, it doesn't matter what situation comes your way, when you set the expectations to here, we're going to be a company with integrity. That means we're going to serve our clients with integrity, and we're going to serve our coworkers and employees with integrity.
Yep.
When you have those at the core of it, it doesn't matter what situation arises or comes to you forefront, those are the things that are going to lead you to success and being able to logically think through the best decisions, not on emotion, right? Like we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Those are the things that are ultimately going to lead to the success in that project, success in handling that conflict or that situation. Those are the things that you get paid the big bucks to do, right? It's
and quite frankly, it just sets the foundation. Like when all of that's in place, and we still have work to do for sure, but when that's in place, a lot of times your clients and your coworkers know the answers to their questions already because it's not what you've said, it's what you've done.
Right.
You've been consistent in all of that. And so, people, when they see that consistency, the questions that they have, a lot of times they already know the answer, and it's not an answer they're not expecting.
Yeah.
When you're inconsistent, they don't know what your answer is, and they may not like it, which often makes leaders continue to be more inconsistent because they're trying to gain that happiness, which is probably more misalignment between your clients and your coworkers.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, you've been giving us a ton of great advice. Like I said, I've been writing notes. I plan on going back and listening to this as well because there's stuff that I missed to write down. But what you've been saying has been so money and so good. We're coming up on an hour for recording, and I'm going to hit you with one last question if you got time. One last question. It's a fun one. So you've been getting together with your buddies, class of 85, right?
Yes.
So if you could go back in time,
yes,
all right, and speak at your prep graduation, but knowing what you know now, what would you say to those guys at that time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's lots of different answers. If I look back at our graduation day on that Friday evening on the lawn outside there, it was a beautiful evening and great night after spending a lot of time in the trenches with my fellow graduates, I think, the perspective that I would share from today is, dream big, surround yourself with amazing people, stay true to the values that you got through your prep experience, continue to connect with each other and continue to help each other learn and grow on their journey, and set your sights high and enjoy the journey while you take every step.
Love it. There's a lot of great wisdom in that as well. And we could probably go on for another hour, honestly, with this conversation. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming over. We're in the conference room here at Prep recording this today, and I appreciate you coming by and recording this episode. It's been a lot of fun, Kevin.
Hey, Jimmy, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it as well.
Absolutely.